Hello, Lorii Wallace. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. Hello, Mr. Wallace.
Yeah. Um, so, just so people kind of get an idea of what's going on here, um, for symmetry of the video, and because if you look in my studio, there's not actually enough space for anyone else down here. But just to maintain symmetry, we're actually in the same house right now. Lori's just in our living room. Um, But, Zoom works this way too. So you don't have to be far away. I guess you can be close by too. So, and also we wanted to make sure that we modeled social distancing. Um, so we don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. Uh, so I was thinking we could talk about how we met first. And um, so it was okay. So since we both equally know this, I'll
Mhm.
start off, and then maybe you can fill in some stuff that I miss. So, um, we met at New Salem Missionary Baptist Church, um, and I was at New Salem Missionary Baptist Church because of uh, Dr. Milton Ruffin, who I'm going to interview for this series, also, and now Dr. Merlin Ruffin, which created a position for me at the church, and I was there for about a year and a half. During that time, the first music that I arranged for an Easter service, I didn't know that was actually collaborating for the first time with who would become my wife. That was you. Uh, and yeah, so you did the choreography
Mhm.
for the dance, and I uh, arranged the music, and there was our first collaboration, of which there have been many since. Um, so when was that? That was 2000,
7.
2007, right? Because we got married in 2008.
Correct.
That's right. Okay, I can make sure I get this stuff right. Um, okay, so you're a dancer, a choreographer, and you're an interior decorator, um, and you're a teacher, and you're a mom, and you're a wife, and you're all of these great things. What made you want to dance? Like, what about dancing was um, sort of drew you into that, made you want that to be something that you spent, your whole life involved in?
Well, I think like a lot of children, when you grow up, I'm the youngest. So my mother worked, and by the time I was born, there was four of us at home. And my two sisters closest to me, we were just pretty close together as far as liking to do things, even though I was the youngest. My mom tried to keep us busy, and my uncle at that time, Vernon Martin, who was a bassist, that moved to California later, had a center called the Creative Worship Arts Center. And in that center, it was an inner city center which we could go to, which children that may not have had the means or the funds or the opportunity even to go to other places to dance. Like at that point, I didn't even think about there being a Toledo ballet or anything like that. And so she basically put us in all of the programs there
Hmm.
in order to keep us busy over the summer while she still worked. And so within that one community center, we did lots of things. We did lots of things. We did karate, which I continued, and I have my brown belt. But we did karate, we did drumming, we did a little bit of gymnastics, and we did African dance, and then they did tap dance. So those were the only types of dance at that point that I really had any contact with was African dance and then some tap dance. That was it. So that's how it all started.
Yeah, and I mean, how about like some like early mentors and um, maybe some early opportunities to dance that sort of a light bulb sort of turned on and said, okay, this is, I'm not just filling my time with this, but this is something that
Mm-hmm.
um, I have much stronger feelings about.
Well, there were a couple of things that sort of shaped how I thought about things. Excuse me. My mother was a pianist, and my dad was a jazz guitarist and bassist. And so we were always musical. And our house was the house on the block that when there were talent shows, our house was the porch that was the actual stage and everything because we sang and we danced outside and everything. But once I began to grow up and do more dancing, it was still basically African dance at that time. And there was a wonderful woman, Donna Thomas, that had a dance company Umuzi Ikaya, that of course I tagged along with my two sisters who was older than I was, but was able to dance with them in that capacity. And once I started getting a little older and older, then I became more interested in other types of dance. I focused a little bit more on the tap dance class that was there. I wasn't as crazy about it because it was really loud in this one little room. It was super loud, and there was probably 25 little kids in that one room. So it literally was just loud. So as I began to progress and dance more and more, and got interested in different types, then found a community center that had modern dance and offered modern dance. So I was able to do that in that capacity. And then I believe I was still in high school, junior high school, and there was a friend of our family that graduated from Boston Conservatory in dance, and her name was Reva Rice. And she's gone on to this point to, she was in Starlight Express, she was in Broadway, now she's on Vegas. But at that time, I was able to be somewhat mentored by her when I was fairly young. After she graduated from Boston, she came back and she began a dance company. And I was able to be in her dance troupe. And there were several other individuals from Toledo that was in Toledo that had danced several other places. So I got to sort of absorb all of this information and excitement about dance. And as much as I loved African dance, and it was the root and the core of all that I knew and loved about dance, I really loved being in her troupe because she was a young lady who did African dance, but then she also went to school and she trained in ballet and modern and jazz and all these other styles that I really had not gotten to really see up close. So I literally tried to take in every single thing that I could from her, and it just developed into this innate sense in me that felt like it had always been there, but it had just been awakened in a different way, of a desire to make life full of dance in one capacity or another.
Yeah. So fast forwarding a little bit. So you went to school for dance,
Yes, I went
to
to
college.
yes, to University of Toledo. And I knew for me that as much as I love to dance, I wanted to use dance for more than just performance. As much as I love performing at that time, I knew that for me, it was more than that for me. At a very young age, I knew that I wanted to teach or help other people. I love helping other people to find their voice through dance or through any type of art form. So in entering University of Toledo, I started as a psychology major because my mom was a sociologist and psychologist. So it's sort of, you think that way when you're younger, but you realize relatively quickly, and so did she, that my desire was in the arts, very, very much so. And so I went to school for dance therapy. And around my senior year, I got the opportunity to then move to Seattle, Washington to dance with the Tacoma Performing Arts Company and do off-Broadway productions while I was there as well.
So pretty big role in one of those productions, right?
I did. I did some Grease and some other things, but probably the biggest role I had there that I was even shocked that I got it, just because I guess at that point I didn't think of myself as a singer that much. Even though I sing, I really strive to dance at that point and gain as much experience as possible. But I was cast in the role of Cassie in a chorus line, which was the lead role there, that you had to dance and sing and you had a solo, and it pretty much was the lead female character in that musical.
Yeah. So, kind of rewinding a little bit or backing up a little bit. So, I mean, you came from a musical family,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and um, how did music play a role? And what kind of music did you hear around the house when you were growing up, and how has that been formative and influential on even maybe certain artistic decisions that you still make?
So realistically, I was a musician before I was a dancer, because my mother was a pianist. All of us had to learn how to play the piano. Whether we stuck with it or not, that was a very different thing. And it was something that she made fun, that we did as a family. She gave everyone vocal lessons and she gave everyone piano lessons. And so that was just part of what we did. That's part of our Sunday dinner. When we had Sunday dinner together, we played music, we sang songs, we had our family talent shows. And so it literally was just a part of who we were. Also, being the youngest, I heard every style of music you could think of within our house. There was James Cleveland playing often, who was one of my mother's favorites, but she also played a lot of Bach. We had country music in the house. We had John Coltrane in the house. We literally had Earth, Wind, and Fire in the house, Diana Ross and the Supremes in the house. We literally had some of everything within the house. And especially when you're the youngest of eight, you hear a lot of different types of music, a lot of different, because everyone has their own style, some similarities. My brother, my oldest brother, Freddie, was actually a drummer. He is a drummer, and he toured with Ebony Fashion Fair and played the drums. So we literally heard all types of music in our house. And so we all have a great appreciation for all different styles of music.
Now, your family is very um, warm and a lot of hugging and very affectionate, very uh, involved, you know, um, and you certainly are that way. That was one of the first things that that drew me to you, was how you were, how warm, um, and engaging. I'm shy,
Mm.
and I'm an introvert, and so, but that didn't seem to matter to you, uh, because you're an extrovert, and so you were very engaging. I remember our first date,
Mhm.
and you're poking me in my cheek and
Yep.
stuff, and I was like, this woman's poking me in my cheek, um, which of course I liked it, so it was
Yeah.
all right. Uh, but your family is very, very warm and very artistic. I mean, I think the influence that your parents had it's very evident. I mean, that your parents were musicians and artists, at least artists, you know,
Mm.
because of the kinds of stuff that it seems like you all appreciate.
Yes.
Something else I was thinking about, um, when you were talking a little earlier, is the undeniable connection or similarity that artists have. Uh, it's like almost like an unfair advantage when your parents are artistic and are so then around the house you have all of this art, you know, artistic stuff, um, and then it also I noticed that there are always, in any of these interviews and any of the great musicians and artists that I know, there was always community outlets.
Mm.
I mean, could have been church, could have been, you know, community organization, you know, could have been, you know, the school, you know, the school system have a strong music program. I met one of your teachers, um,
Oh, yes. Yes.
because you sang in choir in high school, right?
I did.
You went to,
And I was in the orchestra. Proud about that. Yeah.
yeah, and so what instrument did you play in the orchestra? And uh, what is your vocal range?
I played the viola in orchestra all through high school, before I got to high school, and then all through high school. And I'm a soprano.
Yeah, you're a soprano, and um, and okay, so our son Moses, who is around, obviously he's around us often, and uh, you're always singing and he's always
Mm.
singing and all of that, and I um, you know, when I can get him to actually focus, you know, uh, we play drums or, you know, guitar or whatever else, and so he's kind of around that whole thing, which is, you know, if it's something that he decides he wants to do, it'll be a great benefit. If
Mhm.
it's something that he decides he wants to do something else, it'd still be a very rich childhood, surrounded with music and art, and help him to become uh, an appreciator of art and a patron, which is,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
important. Okay, so we were talking about, we got to chorus line, uh, and so at some point you moved back to Columbus, and you started attending New Salem Missionary Baptist Church, and you started the dance ministry there, didn't you?
I did. Well, first, when I moved back to Ohio, I moved to Dayton first,
Right, right, that's right.
and I lived there for a while, and then I moved to Columbus.
Now wait a
And
minute. Now in Dayton, you were a model in Dayton, weren't you?
yes, I did. I modeled with several groups there, and then I actually opened a modeling studio. that was called New Attitudes at that point, and I tried to allow for especially young ladies in the community that was there to teach them poise and etiquette. Although we did fashion shows and things like that, a lot of it was really to build up their self-esteem and help them with poise. And then some high school girls helped them to gain interviewing skills and things like that, just to feel good about themselves and how they looked, however they looked, and just encourage them, to be more self-aware and self-sufficient, and, just feel better about themselves in overall. And then I moved back. Then I moved to Columbus.
Yeah, and so dance in church,
Mm-hmm.
and in particular dance in the black church. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that, and maybe the sort of process of getting the ministry started, and maybe some transition, some developments in that kind of thing?
Okay, well, New Salem actually, they had a dance ministry when I moved here, and when they were going through some redesigning, redefining, restructuring, or however you'd like to put it, Pastor Troy asked if I would be willing to step in, as they changed the course, or they moved to their different level that they wanted to move to as well. And at that point, I knew that would be a large part of my life, because, as I said, when we started growing up, we started at that center, the community center, but we also danced at church, because my mother was a minister at church, and she was the minister of music. So she would as well go from church to help them begin what we now call magnification. Mm-hmm. She helped to different churches to start those, across the city. And so we, of course, when you're young, you go where mom goes. And oftentimes at our church is where we would dance. And at that point, we didn't know all of the styles that there were, because that wasn't the type of classes and lessons that we were able to have when we were younger. But so we just danced. We just moved and we danced. And of course, as you grow, you realize it was modern dance, or what we now call liturgical dance or lyrical dance. Yeah. It is now that style, but then we didn't know what that was. We just danced. So when I moved here, I knew that was going to be a large part of what I did, because when I lived in Dayton, I was never able to really find a church home. I visited churches, I went to churches all the time, but I never found that church home. And so when I moved here, not long after I moved here, someone invited me to New Salem. And once I went there, the first time, I said, okay, I like this church. It was very different for me, because I grew up in a AME church, African Methodist Episcopal Church, and it was a small church. Mm. And so I was not used to, 5,000 members, and all of these seats. So I had to get used to that. But there were some very warm people that made me feel welcome and comfortable. So I knew that was where I wanted to be. And my first part of any dancing at New Salem was, once I joined the church, I joined the singles ministry. Hmm. And so when I joined the singles ministry, we decided to do a play. We wanted to do a play. I don't know if it was the first time that they had a singles ministry, but it was the first time they were doing a play. So we had started this singles ministry, and we decided to do this play. So myself and several other people, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 other people, wrote the play. We actually wrote the play. And so they asked me to choreograph it. So initially I was supposed to just be choreographing it. But by the time it was all said and done, the singles ministry leader, they had one male and one female leader. The female leader ended up getting married to someone else that was in the singles ministry. And so I ended up choreographing it, helping to write it, directing it, and doing the wardrobe for it, all within this same small span of time. But it was an absolutely phenomenal play that was called I'm Lost Without You, that had music and drama and singing. It was really wonderful. So that was the first thing I did at New Salem. So then being asked to do the dance ministry came after that. It came after that.
Yeah, I mean, so when did you meet uh, Charles Beecham?
I met Charles Beecham at New Salem, and I believe I met him. I'm sure I saw him early on, but I'm not sure how long he was there. But it was several years later when I did one of the plays that I did. I knew one of the things that I wanted to do was to do a production of dance ministries with dance and mime and all of that stuff. Just have one show of that. And I remember going to the Ohio Arts Council because I said, oh, I want to do this. Maybe I could get a grant or they can help me do this, because everyone said, go there. So I remember going there, and said I wanted to make an appointment. They immediately, for whatever reason, they immediately gave me an appointment with the director at that time. And I met with that director, and I told her that I wanted to do a production with ministries from all across the city. And the first thing that she said to me was, that'll never happen. And I was crushed. My whole body inside of me was crushed at that second. And I said, why do you say that? And she said, that'll never happen here because ministries do not like to work together. And so I said, okay. And so I left. And I think I was probably discouraged for all of 3 minutes, however long it took me to get to my car. And I just said to myself, okay, well, she can't help me. I'll figure a way to do it. And I just left it at that. And so I think maybe a week or so after that, I asked to see Pastor Troy. I made an appointment to see Pastor Troy, and I told him what I wanted to do. And all he said to me was, okay. That was literally all that he said to me. And I actually, the very first concert I did with different churches was 16 different churches, ministries, dance ministries, and mime ministries we were able to hold at New Salem. And I wanted music. I needed some music. I wanted original music for it. And so I knew Charles from church, and Ed Hill was actually also at church. So I just called both of them up and I asked them if they would create some music for me. And that's how I met Charles Beecham. And ever since then, we've been friends.
Now, of course, I knew you met Charles at New Salem. I'm bringing him up for a particular reason, because he's who introduced us, and he was on our wedding, and all of that good stuff. Real talented musician,
Absolutely,
and good dude. It's my man. Now they told you no, but sometimes no just means not right now.
correct. Yeah, that's good. And not
so,
there.
Right. But you've like done these events and collaborated with like 100 churches or something in Central Ohio since
Pretty
then.
much. Mhm.
Yeah,
Different and in different kind of programs.
yeah,
And we moved out of the churches because it really had gotten very large to
mm-hmm.
do in any one place. And then I also wanted to add a community choir with
Right.
that. So we moved them to the Aladdin and called them Hallelujah.
Yeah,
And we had a community choir and then had churches from and different things from across the state, which we would not have been able to hold in a lot of churches.
now it seems like you had one of those programs at the King Arts Complex, and I seem to remember being somewhat involved with that.
I'm trying to think was I may have had I may have had one at the King Arts, but
Or was it one of
it was
the
a different type of production. I think you maybe I did Lifeline of Ohio. I
yeah, right,
did
right, right,
was their artistic director for
right,
their productions that
right.
we created with them, and that was more so at the King Arts. The
That's right.
Hallelujah productions, yes, they were relatively large, so
Right.
ended up having them at the Aladdin.
Yeah, and so we've collaborated on what seems like dozens of projects,
Mhm.
and and also when I was working at Vineyard Columbus, your dance company came
Yes.
in. So can you talk a little bit about your dance company, when that started, and maybe what it's grown into, and some things that you maybe some vision you have for it.
Well, Tapestry started out of, I believe, our first separate collaboration that we did, Music Through Motion, that we did at Ohio State.
Yeah.
I actually, at that point, I just asked different dancers. If you recall, I used some dancers from Ohio State's dance department,
Mm-hmm.
and then I asked some dancers from the community to join us as we brought the two of those together, the community and then Ohio State with the music by way and some of the dancers. And so after that, some of the dancers that was in that production asked me if I would start a dance company. And I wasn't really sure if I wanted to. And the more they expressed that, they just wanted a different opportunity to be able to collaborate with each other and others in the community, that we could create some very unique productions. And so with that, Tapestry Performing Arts was born. And the name Tapestry comes from the fact that all of us are individual. We're very different. We bring different talents and skills, desires, and even excitement to the table that is all woven together to create one tapestry of arts in many different forms. Tapestry has always been focused on not just the performance aspect of it, because in my heart of heart, I'm a purpose-oriented person. I think about why I do something more than just the fact of doing it. I don't do anything realistically just to do it. It all has to have a reason and a purpose behind it. So that's why part of our motto is purpose is more important than presentation, because down to it, it's beyond the lights. And we put that on everything beyond the lights, because once the lights are gone off of the stage, I want people to remember more than just a dance.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be inspired to do something, to act on something, whether they were enlightened by something, whether they feel motivated to themselves do something, to create something. It just needs to be further than just, oh, that's a nice dance. because at some point people will forget about something just being a nice dance or just being a nice song. You want them to connect with something, because as dancers, I believe, and even musicians, that's what we're supposed to do. We're not just supposed to put on the show. I call it edutainment, because we educate on subjects and then we entertain as well. So you combine those, and that's where you can create the purpose behind your work.
And you've done some programs that were dealing with sort of sensitive subject matter, and it seems like you have a unique ability to make the topic palatable, digestible through art. Um, one of those programs is what's the name of the program? But
The detour.
yes, Detour,
Yeah.
Detour,
Mhm.
and which deals with human trafficking, which is a pretty, I mean, that's a pretty
It,
heavy topic.
it is heavy, yes.
Um, it, it's it's it seems to me to be that doesn't seem to be a common skill to be able to make something like that palatable. I mean, and it was very impactful and emotional, and a lot of people in the audience were, I mean, really impacted by the programming. Um, but the topic was able to, I mean, you were able to provide all this information and actually do something positive with that.
That one, I believe that the Lord had to prepare me for that, because probably when Tapestry began in roughly 2009, 2010, for some reason, even though I didn't know that much about it at that time, for some reason that crossed my mind to be able to do.
Mm.
But at that time, I did not approach that subject at all. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe that God takes us through steps to prepare us so that we are able to handle what we're doing. Because I believe that if I did that in, say, 2010, I'm not sure I would have been able to, one, understand it the way that I understood it when I start, two, show it in the way that I was able to, and then three, even help the dancers be able and ready for them to do the magnificent job that they do in trying to create the visual for what we were able to do. One of the first things, like I said, I started doing diabetes, and we just did things to promote getting tested and things like that with the program that we did. I've done Lifeline of Ohio,
Right, organ and
which
tissue
talks
donation.
about,
Yeah.
yes, organ donation. And then I've even assisted some people on some other topics that they wanted to do with AIDS and things like that. So I believe everything happened for a reason, to prepare you, so that by the time 3 years ago, when the first detour sort of became fruition, the dancers, I believe, were ready. I believe that I was ready at that time to sort of tackle it. That still didn't mean it was easy, because it wasn't. I did
Mm-hmm.
a lot of research, that even the things that I thought I knew, once you do research, you find out how much you really don't know and how much you're learning about it. And then you pray that you're able to sort of show what they go through without offending anyone, and without scaring anyone to the degree where they are not able to take it in. Because do we want people to kind of be like, whoa, yes, because a lot of people still to this day don't think that it's that serious. They don't think so. You want them to do that, but you also need it to be palatable enough for them to be able to receive it, so that then they can think about it and it can sink in where they actually learn about it and can, share it with someone else, hopefully, to keep them from falling into that trap.
Now, you have unusual people skills. Um, I have seen you be able to bring people together. I mean, and it started. I mean, you talked about before they told you, ministries aren't going to collaborate. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do
Yeah.
stuff, but that didn't seem to be an issue because, um, I mean, that's I mean, you've done so much of that, and you've brought so many things together that
Mm-hmm.
um, initially maybe didn't seem like they went together, and but you have a particular vision, and all of these sort of disparate pieces. You know how to bring those together in a way that I, I don't know that I've seen anyone with the ability to do that to the extent that you can. Um,
Well, I will say this. I honestly think that that happens when you are doing what you are purposed to do. I think it only happens when you are doing the things that you're called to do and what you're purposed to do. Because whenever you're sort of just doing something that you want to do and it's not really what you want to do, people hesitate. And people can feel, I believe, when you're genuine. People can feel when you're coming from a good place. People can feel your purpose, because a lot of times I don't believe that people do things for the cause at all times. I think that people do things sometimes because of they believe in the person and not always the cause, because sometimes they don't know what the call is. Like a lot of the dancers, I don't think any of them really understood human trafficking at the beginning, but because they trusted that I was coming from a place of wanting to heal and to help people, they came alongside of that, because they believed that that was what I was going for. Even though my dancers call me Raven, and if anyone knows the show Raven, in the middle of any moment she could stop and she would just stare into space, which means she was getting a vision of something. Whenever that happens, they get scared because they're like, oh Lord, here comes a vision. But I do believe that because they know that my heart is always to help and to heal and to create something that will last longer than the lights being on. I believe that that in itself allow people to then be their authentic self and come alongside to help me to create that, because I can't create any of it by myself. It's because of the wonderful people and creative people that are willing to come alongside and help to make the visions become fruition.
yeah. So yes, but also you you really have an unusual um, skill or gift, however you want to contextualize it, because I know a lot of people that are doing what they believe they're supposed to be doing, and they're great at it, but they don't possess that ability to get people to just decide that they just want to follow them. And
Nothing.
doing the stuff that we do have done, and the projects that we've collaborated on, where I've been everywhere from the person schlepping the stuff to to the musical director, editing audio and video, um, connecting you with different musicians and the artists and things. All of those kinds of capacities that we've collaborated in. It's always been very. They've all been high points for me, and they've been things that I knew were going to be attended well because you were involved with them. And that's just not the kind of thing that, for doing, I think, art at the level that you do it, it's not a common thing. What the common thing is that you do, outstanding work. You work with the best artists. The music's great. The presentation's wonderful. Everything else, and 5 people show up. That's more common than I think what the kinds of events that you tend to be involved with that just are bursting at the seams and everyone is so excited. Now you did something recently which I thought was which was very cool. We've talked about it quite a bit, and I know you're talking about doing another one. That was picked up by the news. You want to talk a little bit about that? It was, it was done. We're in quarantine now, and like I said before, Lorii and I are modeling social distancing. So we're all in quarantine right now, and you had a great idea to have dancers from different places all dancing together, and so it was kind of a different take on a sort of multicam kind of video, and it was picked up by the news. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it's so, as we know, all of us artists have been sort of out of lots of things that we would normally be doing this time of year. I don't have a dance studio per se, but I have a dance company, and we had a production coming up with Columbus Opera, or Opera Columbus, and we also had another production coming up midsummer, as well as I had planned to do the very first awards for dancers, the Grace Awards, Ohio, in August. So we've all been a little, displaced a little bit. And school, as an arts teacher or dance teacher, a lot of things that you do at the end of the year are not happening. Dance studios, their recitals, and all sorts of things is just, they're not happening. And so one of the things that you and I would go to often, but I know I've always gone to, is Stivers Performing Arts School in Dayton. One of my best friends, Deshona Pepper Roberts, is the dance director, and we always go to their spring concerts every year. And all of these things are not happening. And so I tried to think of what could we do together, because there are still areas or segments of dancers that don't really do a lot of things together, maybe not necessarily because they don't want to, but just because some people's circles, they're different things that happen. So I just tried to think of what could I do that could bring all of us together, because I have dance friends in Dayton at DCDC. My goddaughter dances with DCDC. I've trained with Dayton Contemporary Dance Company. I have dance friends in Toledo, in Cleveland, in Cincinnati. And I thought, what could we do in order to do that? So I asked a friend of mine that is a videographer, John Cunningham, if he would help me. And without hesitation, he was like, absolutely. So then I just began to reach out to some people. And initially, I was thinking that I might have like 10 or 12 people But I just reached out to several people just to sort of get a good variety of people and places and things like that. And I ended up, I believe there were like 22, either 21 or 22 people within this one video. And we just created this dancing together at home, Ohio, and just connected the whole video, which I thought was really wonderful just because I love watching people dance. I love people's different expressions. I love how people interpret the music very, very differently. So putting it together for me just helped my excitement about dance even more, just because it actually allowed me to sort of be there in different places. And I was hoping that some of their students from their schools would be able to at least see their teacher moving, and people could see how we are all still just one line of dance all across, and we're all still connected, and we're all in pretty much the same position, but we can still dance together at home. So we had a lot of fun. We really did have a lot of fun. So
Yeah, and
thanks for asking.
yeah, and you're gonna be doing another one of these videos. You're at least in the planning phases of that right
Yes,
now.
of this, especially because when Molly Brewer at Channel 10 sent an email and asked if she could, show some of it or do a little story on it on the news. She even asked me, she sent something back later and said, so when is volume 2 coming out? And I was like, oh, I
Right.
did put volume 1 on there, didn't I?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure how to do the second one, but it is coming. One of the things I appreciated when they did do the story on the news, she even asked me when I talked to her which one was I. For some reason, she guessed which one I was. I have no idea how, but she guessed which one I was. And I told her that I did not need, my dance part did not need to be seen on the news. I didn't want her to do that for that reason, because that wasn't why I did it. I would prefer that she show other people um, dancing, so that they would be from different places. And the most wonderful part was she showed dancers from Columbus, and then she showed from Toledo, from Dayton, and Cleveland. So there was a good variety
Yeah.
of each of those that was in there. And I didn't really know they were going to do 3 sort of separate little sections of it, but they did, which I was very happy about, because it got to show different people, and they could see it and their families could see it. And I thought that was a wonderful thing that happened.
Yeah, that was really great. Um, so I'm I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about. I want people to also know about you as a teacher, um, and how that has been. I mean, I guess you can talk about maybe teaching over the last couple of years or something, but then you can just talk about kind of teaching in general and why that is. Because I think as a choreographer, as someone that's artistic director, and someone that it's written plays, and presentations and things, then you're teaching in that capacity also. But if you can talk a little bit about teaching and maybe some things that you're involved with now and have been maybe over the last few years or something.
I think I've watched my mother teach since I was a child, and she didn't teach in school, but she taught in the church. And when she went to the other churches, and I watched her beautiful, sweet spirit, the way that she taught and the way that she met people where they were. And she always told us growing up that God gives us all talents. What we choose to do with them is up to us.
Mm.
And so I watched my sisters teach dance. I've watched my sisters teach in classes and at fashion shows. I've watched them sort of lead the way to that. When I got to college, the teacher taught me in a way that I had not been taught before, which I think anyone should always relish in, when they can learn something new and they can learn a different way and they can learn to look at something very differently. And I remember a freshman in college, and Elaine Valois, who was this lady at that time, I believe she came right here to me, and she had us to be a rock. She said, okay, be a rock. And I thought, I did not understand that. I didn't grow up being a rock or thinking about modern dance in that way or that aspect. And she would say, be a tree. And she didn't mean in just the literal sense. She got us to think kinesthetically in how
Right.
things moved and how they then joined to other things to moved, and how you were free at certain points and how you were stagnant at certain points. And that just sort of created in my mind a whole different way to think about things. And I think about that now when I teach, and as I have begun to teach different things, whether it's choreography in tapestry or whether it's students at school. And teaching at an inner city school, you have varying degrees of children and what they know about dance and what they understand about dance, even what they believe that they can be and do as dance. Because to some of them, their epitome of dance is Chris Brown or Beyonce. That was who they told me was great dancers that they knew of. They didn't know Alvin Ailey or Misty Copeland or Baryshnikov. They didn't know any of those people. So part of being a teacher is meeting them where they are and asking them to share what they know about dance, and not sort of criticizing it or putting it down or telling them what they don't know, but taking that and using that to then teach them as what they can learn with that, based upon that. A lot of them know about hip hop. And that's why they gravitated to Usher or Chris Brown and things like that. And 2 years ago, I was teaching K through 6th grade. So this past year, I started teaching high school. And it's exactly the same thing. Their knowledge of dancers was limited. And so what I began to do with them is to take, okay, so you like Usher. And we would look at a video of Usher, and I asked them what style did they think that was. And of course they say, oh, that's hip hop or that's this. And then I would find different videos. I would find a jazz video, a ballet video, a modern dance video. That would have some of those same turns and some of those same spins within the same dance thing, and allow them to see how the similarities were there. And then it created a different idea for them about what they could learn and how they all were connected and how they all were created out of the same things. And so, I mean, it warms my heart. I think that's probably one of the things that makes me the happiest, is when I see a student that doesn't think that they can do something, and then they do it, and just the joy on their face and the pride on their face, and then the excitement. They feel like, oh, well, now can you show me how to do this? And now what can I learn? And it's the same way with choreography. there are people that dance that may not have tried a different style of dance. I've had dancers in the company that have done ballet for 20 years, and that's been their only style because that was just the style that they either got used to or no one gave them the opportunity to branch out of. And so within even tapestry, I challenge them to branch out into all different styles, no matter what type of dance we're doing. Even the ballet dancers have to try the African dance. Now, they may not do the African dance on stage, but they all have to try it because you can't really appreciate something until you understand it. And so part of that understanding is just trying it and finding the joy in it and finding the similarities.
You're talking in it confirms there's so many similarities in process, in the arts, different disciplines in the arts. Um, and one of the things that you were talking about as far as sort of people kind of staying in their own lane and not sort of venturing into other styles of dance, that's a pretty common thing that you see in music, where people like, okay, well, this is what I do. And my thing with my students is they need to understand that they have to be able to, do more than just something one dimensional, because they won't work. I mean, because we're not in a place. The music industry is not what it once was. For the kinds of students that I have that want to play jazz, you have to be multifaceted and multidimensional. And that, of course, is something that I've taken serious in my own musicianship, um, and even learning other instruments. And you can see that there's a trumpet under there.
I do know that.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have that together yet, but I see music in the arts as something that is inexhaustible. Uh, there's so much stuff that you can explore, and if you're stagnated or you feel um, burned out or whatever it is, you can always look to some other aspect of the arts and get engaged and find your life again.
That's a
Find that
wonder.
energy again.
That's a wonderful way to put that. That is one thing I know I tell a lot of people about you. You definitely were meant to be in music and do music because I tease people and tell people when you get bored, you learn a new instrument. And sooner or later, you're going to run out of instruments. Or once you do, you'll probably create your own instrument after that.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I was going to say that I have watched you do with your students, which a lot of people do not do that. One thing you do is you give them everything. You don't hold back. Like there are teachers that will teach people something to a degree, but they won't teach them all of it, whether they think that the student will become better than they are or just as good as them or whatever, which is, as a teacher, that's what we're supposed to do. But you don't do that. You give them everything. And as much as you give them, you expect them to take it in and at least try it. And if they don't end up continuing to do it later, okay. But you expect them to at least try it and put in the effort. I know that you give them plenty of opportunities for different types of music, to learn different types of music, different styles of music, whether it's with the one band that you created that with the singers with it and everything.
The Ohio Show Band.
Yeah. The Ohio Show Band, along with even allowing them opportunities to play in churches. Not many people do that for their students where they can maybe be in a jazz area, but also they get the gospel music, they get Christian music, which can to some people be two separate things, but then they can also get R&B and different show sort of tune, that which with the show band it was a multitude of styles of music that the students got to engage in, and a lot of them don't get to do that, and that is, I know, wonderfully appreciated by your students that go on to do other things because they're not out there once they graduate and only know about John Coltrane. That's it. They know all types of other things, and I've had to explain it to people when they come to tapestry shows, because they'll ask, oh, well, is it just liturgical or is it Christian music? And I have to explain to people, no. For one, if you're a Christian, everything you're doing is Christian, because if you're doing it, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from that place that is inside of you, that is organic, and that's where it is. However, the styles of music are not the same, because I like all styles of music, and you want to be able to create to all different styles of music, but it still can be beautiful. They're just different styles of music.
Yeah, I mean, with my students, um, I've never understood. Well, I think I do understand it actually, but I've never wanted to be so insecure or about where I am as a musician that I'm unwilling to share, with my students or to share with people, period. In my experience, what separates people as far as skill level is the amount of time that they're willing and the amount of work that they're willing to put in. Yeah, you have to have a certain amount of natural ability, but once you have that amount of natural ability, everything else is time and, intensity. And it's not just going through the motions, but it's that, that leaning in, really trying to squeeze that little extra out. It's that real intense thing. We talk a lot about, time waits for no one. And yes, that's true. And we only have a certain amount of time. It's limited amount of time. All of that is true. But you can have time and not have any energy.
Yeah, that's true.
And the energy with the time is what actually produces results. It's not just the time by itself. Something that, I admire about you is you're I don't know anybody that's a harder worker than you. You are incredibly hardworking, dedicated, putting every ounce of energy into all the stuff that you do. And I think I'm that way also. And but I can't think of someone that's more dedicated than you are. So in addition to being maybe the most creative person that I know, and I
You're
know a lot of
biased.
really creative folks. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess I am biased, and that's okay. But I mean, you can check the tape on this. Uh, I don't know anybody that can do the kinds of things and the range of things that you're capable of doing at the level that you can do them. It's pretty amazing. I did want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about your interior decorating business, and maybe talk a little bit about some things that you have coming up, because you do like repurpose art and you do some other things, and I know that you're getting some things together and ready to go as far as maybe having a sale with some of this original stuff and art and things. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, one thing I was going to say first about you saying hardworking, I think that the only way that other people will give you 100% is if you're given 100% yourself. I think that if when people see that something is important to you,
Hmm.
then that's how it can become important to them. Because if I'm just telling people, do this, do this, do this, but yet I'm not putting in the work myself, I'm not doing the same things this myself, I'm not, putting in the time, the effort, the excitement, I think it's hard for people to give that back to you. I think it's not even right to expect it.
Right.
If you're expecting it and you're not giving it, then you really shouldn't giving it, nor should you be leading anyway. But you have to be able to give what you're asking for people, because some people, if they haven't seen it before, people can't model what they don't see. So if you're giving it, then they're not even thinking about all the extra time that they're giving. They're giving you what you're giving because they all have the same goal. You have this goal that you want to create this ending product, and you all equally want it to be successful, and you want it to be purposeful, and you want it to be changeful, meaning you wanted to change somebody's mind, perspective, desires, imagination, or something. So I believe if you're giving it, then you can get it back. Now, sometimes, yes, you give it and some people still don't give it back. But for the most part, if you're giving it, you'll get it back. Um,
Yeah, and if you're focused on if someone else is giving it back or not,
right,
I would have some questions about how hard working that person was, like,
right,
and
that's true.
where that effort actually is coming from. Is it coming from, like, I'm going to do this because I'm trying to get them to work, or am I doing this because you know I believe that you know this is my act of worship, that this is I'm supposed to do this. I was
Mm-hmm.
created to do this, and I don't get to pawn that off on someone else because this is my responsibility.
That's true.
And
That is true.
I think people, they can tell. Yeah,
Yes.
they can tell if you're serious or not.
They can. That I do believe that they can. So set the atmosphere, interior, decorating and decor. I believe my launch party was, we got married 2000, maybe 2009, 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And I've always had a desire to decorate and to recreate and make
You
something different out of
you
nothing.
decorated this room that you're sitting in right now.
Oh
These
yes, yes.
colored pillows, and all this funky pillows
Yeah.
and stuff. All right, go ahead.
But it really did start when I was younger. Like I said, it was me. I'm the youngest. So by the time I got to high school, it was just me and my mom at home. My sister that was closest to me, was out, had gone out of the house, and she got married. And so it was just she and I. So I remember her taking me to the furniture store and letting me pick out the furniture. And I remember just changing it around oftentimes. She would come home from work and she would tell everybody, my aunts and uncles, that when she came home, she had to turn the light on right inside the door when she came in the house, because I probably will have moved the furniture in some other sort of way. And so she wanted to make sure she didn't bump into anything. So I really love that she allowed me to express that part of myself, that artistic side of myself. But my sisters, like I said, we are all so artistic. My sister, Terry, she actually is fantastic artist. And so she did art all the time. So I got to see that. And she's also a fashion designer, but my sister Jay, who recently passed, she was a fashion designer. So it was just creativity, just everywhere, all over the place. I mean, I don't think I had a choice but to be creative. My sister Sandy did poetry and just has this gift, this way with words. And my sister Diane played the bass and the drums. So literally everybody did something. I watched my sister Janice teach dance and just create this other workshop facility, Abstract Impact, who still to this day allows young kids to dance and play drums and do art. And it's just everywhere. So that was just natural for me, because interior decorating to me is sort of a combination of everything. It's like I can move things around. I can create spaces for people that express who they are. There was the first art piece I did was because I decorated someone's home and they didn't have funds to get this piece of art that they wanted. It was a painting. And they showed me a painting in a magazine and they said, I want something like this. So everything that we saw was above the amount that they had to spend at that time. And so I just thought, I wonder if I can make that. So I got some paint and some canvas and I created it. It didn't look exactly like it, but it was my representation of that, and they loved that. And so then I just started just playing with other mediums and things like that, and breaking up tile and creating things and repurposing things for people who may not have had the money to buy something new, but instead of buying new lamps that they couldn't afford, I repainted them, I recovered them. I just tried to do different things like that, so that I would still be able to decorate their houses, lots of them for free at the beginning. They just had to be able to pay for whatever stuff they wanted to go in there. And then the art sort of emerged out of that, and finding ways to repurpose old doors and repurpose dressers and repurpose pictures and just things like that. So I absolutely love decorating people's homes, restaging their homes. From sometimes people want just a new look and they don't have much money at all to buy anything. So just finding creative ways to move things around and things like that, which is what happened with this room. I didn't go out and buy a whole lot of things. I just looked in storage and looked around to see how things could be shifted and moved. And, you know, you buy a can of paint or two and you can change a lot of things like that. So I really try to, and I kind of pride myself on being able to work with people where they are. And whatever you have to work with, that's what we will create your space with. If they want to sell a home, you know, I can stage it and create it so that they can get the most money out of that as much as possible. And just trying to help people find ways to use what they have, to then go to the next level, which is how what I'm about to do it came to play as well. I am creating a fashion line that's called Remix, and it's my mix of some things that I love, denim and leather and camouflage, and just finding new ways to repurpose, restructure, and all of that, those items in a new and different way that creates this, as Shawn calls it, funky funky items and clothing.
I always say funky because that was your word.
It's different, very unique, funky, unique things.
I don't mean I don't mean smelly. I mean
We
funky,
know that.
like I mean like, you know, funky like. like Bust a Move Funky,
Bust a move
like
fun.
so, like 70s Soul Train Funky. I don't know, whatever.
So,
Yeah, you can tell that I'm not a dancer.
yes, okay. But I
Okay.
have seen you try to bust out some moves when you were doing the Columbus Jazz Orchestra gig or two. I've seen that, or a no, what's the one? Cab Calloway band. That one. I've seen you bust some moves with
Yeah.
it.
Well, I interviewed Phil Marsh,
Oh
who
wow.
is he he's the band leader for the Hip Pocket, and I played in that band for a year and a half, and we had all kind of dance moves in that band. And
I need to see the videotapes.
uh, I I think we burned them all, or I think I had them burned, but that was a great experience. He's such a good dude. You remember we went to the 25th anniversary of the Hip Pocket.
Oh
We went up
yes,
to Grand
yeah, that's
Rapids.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. Okay,
that
yeah,
was very
I do
cool.
remember him.
Um, you know, uh, the interior decorating piece and your creativity with that, and um, you've been somewhat of an event planner for different events, and then you've also sort of taken the sort of interior decorating skill and decorated different events or
Mhm.
galas or whatever. And you've also done at least one that I can remember uh, wedding reception.
Oh,
Um, uh, Back in 2008, and I just remember um, I was like, this woman has got all of these twigs and berries and all of this what seemed to be totally random stuff to me, and I totally had no perspective on it. And then I turned around, and this, the reception was just so, um, beautiful. Of course, the wedding was beautiful. We had a what was it, 14,
yes. Not my fault. Not my fault.
14 bridesmaids and groomsmen, and we were married at the Greek Orthodox Church, and there was an event that was pretty big deal for me that we sort of came back 12 years later and
Mhm.
did recently, that How Sweet the Sound uh,
Yeah,
program.
that was awesome.
There's a lot of effort involved in that, and it looks like it's kind of taken on a life of its own. I think it's gonna be really cool when we see what happens in the future. But is there anything else that you want to say? Well, oh, there is one topic that you're a mom, and
Absolutely.
yeah, you're a mom,
Most
and
important job.
that's right. And um, Moses, can you? So Moses is going to watch this, and maybe he would like to hear a message from you.
Well, our Moses, our Moses August James Wallace. He is, I think that he has some of both of us. I really do think that he has wonderful pieces of both of us, because when he gets into something, he is really intense about that, whatever it is, which he definitely gets from Shawn, as far as like super serious focus at times. And then he also has this other side that is the most absolute people person, friendliest person that loves hugs. I don't believe he knows strangers at all. That he definitely gets from me. And He
Yeah, he
just
didn't get that from me.
no.
Didn't he?
He is just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful little guy, little tall guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Moses is he's sweet and he's smart and he's intelligent and loving, funny, creative, and loves music and dancing, and right now believes that he's going to be at least five major careers at this particular moment. He's going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
He's going to be a fireman, a policeman, what else is it? A pilot, and a musician
And a
is what he's,
superhero.
yeah, and a superhero. That's right. There's more. So he is, and then he did say a teacher the other day
Mm.
as well. So
He told me the other day, I want to be a doctor of music.
yes.
I think sometimes he just tells me what he thinks I want to hear him say.
Yes, yeah, he could be doing that. And when we were talking about me being a flight attendant, he said he wanted to be a pilot as well. So yes,
Right.
it's a growing list that
Yeah.
Moses, if you are watching, we cannot wait to see whatever you're going to be. You are going to be spectacular at it, and no matter what you choose to be, mommy and daddy loves you with all of our heart.
Absolutely. Love you, Moses. And love you, Lorii.
I love you too, honey.
All right. You have anything else that you wanted to say, or maybe something you want to plug that I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about? Or maybe a sort of a message to folks that are out there right now dealing with this quarantine and everything.
Well, I'll first thank you for having me on your show. I thank you. I thank you for that. I believe that these interviews that you're doing, I think that they are wonderful for people to be able to do, because a lot of times right now, people are not having a lot of outside connection, of course. Well, at this point, people are beginning to get back out, but people haven't had a lot of outside connection. So I think that just getting to spend some time having to have a conversation with you, being able to have a conversation with you that doesn't have to be anything specific, but you're just talking. I think that that's a wonderful thing for people to be able to do. I know a lot of musicians, maybe a little more so than dancers, I believe, are probably just gone a lot more. So you're busy, so you're always zipping and zapping, so you don't even have as much time for each other to kind of talk to each other. So I know, as the wife of a musician, he loves the time that he has spent in these interviews, because he gets to talk to his friends, people that he admires and look up to, enjoys playing with, and creating music with, that you're able to spend time with them, talking to them. And that in itself is worth the interview all by itself. And I do believe that time to come, when people look back at these interviews and they learn from them, because all of the interviews that I have watched so far that you have done, it's musicians and teachers and everybody sharing their knowledge. So I've even learned things about how to approach different situations, whether it's from a teaching perspective or whether it's even from a learning perspective. I just listened to Dad Wallace's again today, and of course there were stories I didn't know. I hadn't heard all of the stories, but just even listening to him, and as a parent, and nurturing the talent, are wonderful gifts that people may not get any other time. So I hope that people will listen to your interviews and share the interviews, especially if they want to be musicians, especially. those are the main ones that I've heard. And just as a person and leading, all of the knowledge that are in these hour and a half interviews that people are sharing are things that some people would have to pay for at another time, that now you're getting to sit and you just listen to conversations. Basically, I actually think that they sound more like quarantine conversations, because it's literally just people sharing their knowledge and hoping that the people to come, the next generation, will listen to these and learn from them, and then take some of that and then do more with them and be able to impart more knowledge. So I do thank you for that. And I know you're interviewing other people, but one thing about my husband that he does not do is, I think we both have this flaw trait, so to speak, is neither of us really likes to kind of toot our own horn. We don't do very well with that. And I've had people ask me, well, why didn't you tell people that you did this or that? That's just normally not what I do. I'm usually sort of building other people up and what someone else did. And at this moment, my last comments will be to make sure people understand the type of musician that you are, the professor that you are, the person that you are. You give 100% to your students and anyone that you are giving lessons to and sharing your knowledge with. He does not hold back at all. He is never worried about giving too much so that someone will reach a different level. In fact, I think he would be happier if they would, because he feels like he will have done his job. And he is probably the most humble person that I know, as far as the things that they have done in their past and the opportunities that they have had. He wouldn't tell you that he was on Phil Donahue and on the cover of a BET magazine. He wouldn't tell you that. But that's just the type of person that he is. You wouldn't tell people all the people that you've played for. And it isn't for as to gloat. It is more so they have made him the person that he is today because he have had those opportunities. He's taken the opportunities and learned from them, and then strive to be better, so that when he teaches, the opportunities that he's had, he's grown from them and he's able to teach his students so that they can grow from all of his knowledge as well. That's what I'll say.
I'll pay you later.
In shoes. No.
This is I'm paying you under the table right now. So it's
Okay.
under the table. Under the table. Okay. Thank you for saying that.
But thank you. I appreciate you and all of this that you're doing. I do.
Well, thank you very much. It was great having you on. I pray for our family.
Absolutely.
And for our community, and pray for the day that we can get back on the stage in front of an audience safely.
Yes. And may I just say one last thing to any artist, whether you're a musician, a dancer, an actor, spoken word artist, whoever you are, use this time to grow. Basically, use this time to develop something within yourself, for your skill, for your talent, something else that you may have wanted to do that you may not have had the time to do, that now you have the time to do. You have the time to develop, whether it is writing something, whether it's learning something different, whether it's just even listening to videos and things like that to help you to be better at whatever it is that you choose to do. I just implore of you to not allow this time to go by, and for you then to say, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have learned that. Just use the time now to think of how can you do whatever it is that you do better, more effectively, and with a more grateful heart. That's all.
See you later, sweetie.
Bye.
Actually, I'll see you in a few minutes.
I'll see you in a minute. Bye.
Okay,
Thanks.
goodbye.